Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a warm good morning. Uh, Welcome to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for our weekly press briefing. Let me first begin by the ongoing peace process. Pakistan has been recognized for its constructive diplomatic engagement in supporting de escalation, ceasefire efforts, and a broader pursuit of stability between the United States and Iran. Throughout sustained interaction with both Washington and Tehran, Islamabad has sought to encourage dialogue, facilitate the exchange of messages, and helping create condition and space for conducive and meaningful negotiations. The approach that Pakistan has undertaken underscores consistent commitment to regional stability and international peace, reflecting our preferences for principled, dialogue oriented diplomacy for addressing complex geopolitical challenges and managing complicated disputes and conflicts. In this context, under the leadership of Prime Minister Mohammad Shahbaz Sharif and with active engagement of Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Senator Mohammad Ishaq Dar and Chief of Defence Staff and Chief of the Defence Forces and Chief of Army Staff Field Marshal Sayyid Asim Munir, Pakistan has maintained open channels of communication with the concerned parties as part of our facilitative and mediatory role. As part of these ongoing efforts, the Prime Minister is currently undertaking visits to key regional countries, while the Chief of Defence Forces and the Chief of Army Staff arrived in Tehran yesterday. Collectively, these initiatives, these pursuits reflect our sustained efforts for peace and our commitment that these efforts are best advanced through dialogue and cooperation. And this has been a fact which has been acknowledged in diplomatic circles around the world, Pakistan's constructive and stabilizing contributions. The Prime Minister visit to the three countries has strong bilateral content as well, and I will mention that aspect later. But before embarking on this visit, the Prime Minister undertook intense diplomatic exchanges with his counterparts across the globe. This was in start before the Islamabad peace talks, and these exchanges continued after the talks. Earlier, before the start of these peace talks, the Prime Minister received a telephone call from the Federal Chancellor of Austria, His Excellency Christian Stocker. They held a warm telephone exchange. This was on the 9th of April. The Prime Minister appreciated Austrian Chancellor's strong message of endorsement and support for Pakistan's peace efforts that have helped the US-Iran ceasefire, as well as for ensuring resumption of negotiations between the two sides. Both leaders stressed upon the importance of ensuring that ceasefire be upheld and strengthening the prospect of successful negotiations. The same day, the Prime Minister received a telephone call from His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Amir of the State of Qatar. His Highness congratulated the Prime Minister on successful diplomatic efforts that has led to the US-Iran ceasefire. The two leaders expressed the hope that through concerted efforts, peace would return soon to the entire region. The same day, that is on the 9th of April, the Prime Minister received a telephone call from His Excellency Friedrich Merz, Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany. The German Chancellor expressed strong endorsement to Pakistan for our role in these peace efforts and for the holding of ceasefire between US and Iran and on the start of negotiations. Both leaders expressed serious concern over the ongoing hostilities in Lebanon and hope that the peace returns to the entire region. On the 9th of April, the Prime Minister also received a telephone call from the Prime Minister of Italy, Her Excellency Giorgia Meloni. The Prime Minister Meloni appreciated Pakistan's successful diplomatic efforts aimed at facilitating the talks and acknowledged and congratulated Pakistan for hosting these talks. The two leaders also discussed Lebanon and agreed the need for coordinated international efforts to prevent further attacks against that country. On April 10, our Prime Minister received telephone call from the Prime Minister of United Kingdom, His Excellency Keir Starmer. The Prime Minister Starmer deeply appreciated Pakistan's effective diplomatic efforts and facilitated the Prime Minister on hosting peace negotiations in Islamabad, and he offered his best wishes for the success of this endeavor. Ladies and gentlemen, on 13th April, the Prime Minister received telephone call from the Prime Minister of Japan, Her Excellency Sanae Takaichi. Appreciating Prime Minister's diplomatic role in facilitating the ceasefire, the Prime Minister of Japan expressed her country's full support for the peace process and its importance in regional stability and particularly in global energy security. The same day, the Prime Minister received a telephone call from the Canadian Prime Minister, His Excellency Mark Carney. He congratulated Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif on our peace efforts and offered complete endorsement of Canada for Pakistan's role towards de-escalation and regional peace and security. Ladies and gentlemen, eventually these peace talks did take place and were extensively covered, and I thank the media colleagues for their attention, their responsibility, and their dedication with which they covered these talks. As you know, the respective delegations were headed by the Vice President of the United States, His Excellency J.D. Vance, and the Honorable Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mr. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf. They were in Pakistan from 11th to 12th of April. Before embarking on peace talks, the two delegations called on the Prime Minister, Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif, separately. We issued brief press readouts of these meetings. The talks continued for 21 hours. That is the duration of actual negotiation. Overall, the process continued for well above 30 hours if you count the movement of the delegations, the momentary breaks for meals and coffees and so on. So as such, the entire negotiation process was intensive and extensive, both in terms of scope and timelines. The Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, along with the Chief of Defense Forces and the Chief of Army Staff, helped mediate several rounds of intense and constructive negotiations. You would recall that in his remarks at the conclusion of these talks, the Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Mohammad Ishaq Dar, had expressed hope that the two sides would continue with the positive spirit to achieve durable peace and prosperity in the entire region and beyond. It is imperative that the parties continue to uphold their commitment to ceasefire. The DPM has also reiterated that Pakistan has been and will continue to play its role to facilitate engagement and dialogue between the two countries in the days to come. And indeed, these words of the Deputy Prime Minister are being upheld now that our Chief of Defense Forces was in Iran yesterday, arrived in Iran yesterday, and our Prime Minister has embarked on a three countries visit. Let me reiterate that the visit to Saudi Arabia and Qatar has, of course, a very strong bilateral component as well. The Prime Minister visit to the three countries is from 15th to 18th of April 2026. The visit to Saudi Arabia and Qatar are in the bilateral context. As I mentioned, you would see the press readouts as the meetings progress. The visit to Turkey is in the context of the Anatolia Diplomacy Forum, where the Prime Minister will participate in a high-level panel discussion alongside with the world leaders, and he'll present Pakistan's perspective. Last evening, Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif called on His Royal Highness Prince Mohammed bin Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. The Prime Minister expressed full solidarity and support for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in the wake of recent regional escalations, and he appreciated Saudi Arabia's exemplary restraint demonstrated throughout the conflict, and indeed exemplary patience. The Prime Minister shared with His Royal Highness the recent developments related to Pakistan's peace efforts that led to the US Iran ceasefire and the recently held Islamabad talks between US and Iran. His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, appreciated Pakistan's constructive role in the peace process. The Prime Minister expressed his sincere appreciation for His Royal Highness the Crown Prince on the kingdom's consistent support to Pakistan's economic stability. Both countries enjoy a unique relationship, as you know, and there was strong. We both have strong strategic defense partnership under the Pakistan-Saudi Arabia Strategic Mutual Defense Agreement. Apart from the Prime Minister's engagement, the Deputy Prime Minister also remained busy throughout the last 2 weeks, held numerous telephone conversations, numerous direct interactions with his counterparts. And let me just very briefly list some of the important telephone conversations of the past 2 weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll just list them. There was a common message of support for peace efforts and our advocacy for the settlement of all outstanding disputes, as well as our mediatory efforts between the relevant countries. So on the April 2nd, the Deputy Prime Minister spoke with the Foreign Minister of Egypt, Turkey, and Uzbekistan. On April 3, he spoke with the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia. On April 4th, he spoke with the Foreign Minister of Bahrain and Egypt. On 5th, he spoke with Iran and Saudi Arabia again. And on April 6th, he spoke with the foreign ministers of Japan, Portugal, the UK, and Canada. On April 7th, he spoke with the foreign ministers of Egypt, Bahrain, and Norway. On April 8th, he spoke with the foreign ministers of Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Turkey, Qatar, the European Union High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, foreign ministers of Morocco, Spain, Kuwait, and Canada. So there were around 8 or 10 telephone calls on April 8th. On April 9th, he spoke with the Saudi foreign minister, the Uzbek foreign minister, again with the EU High Representative, South African foreign minister, Azerbaijan's foreign minister, and UK's foreign secretary. So these were the intense diplomatic exchanges that took place between the two sides. On April 10th, the DPM spoke with the foreign minister of France, Netherlands, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey. And on April 13th, he spoke with the foreign minister of China and the UK British foreign secretary. On April 14th, he spoke with the foreign ministers of Canada, European Union, Kuwait, Romania, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and the foreign minister of Turkey. So, ladies and gentlemen, between a week prior to the Islamabad peace talks and 3 days subsequent to these peace talks, you could count the number of telephone calls which demonstrate our very active involvement in the facilitatory and mediatory roles, and then taking our important partners across the globe into confidence on these peace talks. Moving on to the other subjects, let me very briefly go on to the situation in the Middle East, where this week, on the 7th of April, late last week, we expressed our strong condemnation on storming of Al-Aqsa Mosque by the Israeli occupation forces. And on 9th of April, we strongly condemned the Israeli aggression against Lebanon. We termed such actions against as undermining international efforts aimed at promoting peace and stability in the region. And of course, Israelis' attacks against Lebanon constitute a grave violation of international law and fundamental humanitarian principles. Uh, Another very important event of the last week, which I would want you to take note of, was the 45th meeting of the Council of the Regional Anti-Terrorism Structure, the SCO RATS, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. Pakistan is currently holding the chairmanship of this group, SCO RATS as it is acronymed. Uh, we successfully chaired the 45th Council meeting that was held in Tashkent last week. Our Director General for Counterterrorism, Faria Bukti, is our lead on this forum. On April 3rd, the RAT Council, the SEO RATS Council, conducted detailed deliberation focusing on regional security. Several reporting documents of the SEO RATS were adopted, um, including the document which would be submitted to the councils of the heads of member states of the SCO. The council expressed concerns over the developments in the Middle East. It also highlighted the persistent threat by terrorist groups in Afghanistan and stressed the need to strengthen cooperation in joint efforts to countering terrorism. It was agreed that the next SCO RATS meeting will be hosted by Pakistan in September. As a frontline state against terrorism, Pakistan continued to make significant sacrifice to ensure regional and global security and remains committed to working with our international and regional partners to advance collective counterterrorism efforts in accordance with the SCO principles, international law, and the UN Charter. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we also held the senior official meetings of the four countries, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, that was held in Islamabad day before yesterday on 14th. The senior officials is a follow-up of you would recall, the consultative meeting held by our foreign ministers in Islamabad on the 29th of March. From Pakistan, I had the privilege of leading our delegation to these talks. We reviewed key areas of cooperation and prepared recommendation for the upcoming foreign affairs meeting that is to be held in Turkey on the 17th of April. The officials, my colleagues from Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt, called on our Deputy Prime Minister, Senator Mohammed Asad Dar, and Foreign Secretary, Ambassador Amna Baloch. With this, conclude my opening remarks.